Ace, thank you for joining us. We
Thanks for having me. I know it's a little late for you over there.
actually
Thanks for
no,
making
you
the time.
you you are one of the better ones because others have locked me down at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. So you actually are one of the better ones in timing. So Ace, we've been good friends and worked together on a number of projects. But just to give, the audience who you are and your background, you've had a very illustrious career so far and embarking on something really special. Can you just tell us, your background in terms of profession?
Yes, and I've been an entrepreneur for a number of years, but it all started in 10th grade when I decided to open a tennis racket stringing business. And that's when I knew I got the bug.
You got
So
the
it actually
bug.
was not a terrible business, but I got free string out of it at least.
So you would do
So
what?
I would sit around the tennis courts, wait for somebody to break strings, and then offer to quickly string their rackets, cheaper price, and return it back to them. So
This was what,
that
10th
would be
grade?
my. This was 10th grade. That was my hustle, and that would be a lot. That would allow. I used to break strings a lot, and I used to play tennis quite a bit
Okay.
back in the day. And so this was my hustle to be able to get, fancy equipment and
Tennis equipment.
tennis equipment, and
Right.
just I figured out how to go to build something, and that was pretty early on. I think I had a lot of bad ideas. I think before that, but that was the first one that sort of clicked.
Okay.
And then after good news, went to college. I ended up working out in Asia for a while. Came back, discovered the internet thing had changed everything, and taught myself a lot of programming. I was reasonably technical, but taught myself programming, and ended up really just I'm an internet native, you know, literally have never had a career where it has not been internet related.
Okay.
So early on, and I worked at companies you may have heard of, like Ogilvy, which is a big advertising agency.
Yes, definitely.
So I got to work on companies like Ford. So I built Ford.com. I got to work for Mercedes helping build out the Maybach, and how people would go off and purchase the Maybach in the
Did you get
US.
to drive the car or no?
I did not. They're all bespoke and made to order. It was, but for me, I mean, I was a car guy, as you know.
Yes,
For me, that was exciting, and I got
of
to go to
course.
Detroit. I ended up spending 6 or 7 months in Detroit, and I would go there 4 days a
Motown.
week in Motown. I was in Dearborn, so not really
Oh
Detroit.
no, but that
Uh,
Dearborn is Middle Eastern food all over.
it
That's
turns
the hub
out,
right there.
yes, it turns out it prepared me for hanging out with you,
Okay.
and so it's, but great food, super interesting, like just culturally because it's random.
Right.
Why is it? Why is Dearborn? And this is, obviously it's a Ford town.
Yeah.
Um, but I got to be there, and at that point, after when we had big budgets back then at
Right.
Ogilvy and at
Right.
Ford, so I got to stay in the Ritz Carlton. I would be there 4 days a week,
Not a bad
and the
gig.
first few days, yeah, it was not a bad gig, but the first, and it's the worst. Probably I don't have any good judgment because I still don't stay in Ritz Carltons, but the answer is I assume it's one of the worst in the world because eventually it went out. It went away. It went away.
Oh, the
But
Ritz Carlton
essentially, it
did.
was there. The Ritz Carlton. Essentially, it
Okay.
was there for Ford vendors to
Okay.
come in, and the first day you go, "This is great. I'm going to get steak. Then I'm going to get shrimp, and then and then by day three, you realize, you know what? You can't really eat this every day. Where did the real people eat? And it turns out they're eating Middle Eastern food, and
Yeah, the best.
uh,
Well, and the best in the
and
US.
I will. I'll just say pretty good, pretty
Yeah.
good. And so, after spending a bunch of years doing that, I, ended up, did a couple things in between, and then I'm laying around and I'm in New York, and it's after 9/11, and things are kind of quiet. It's kind of a mess. And I get a call from a friend of mine who was at one point running AOL Sports, and
Hmm.
AOL was a big deal back then. And he goes, "I have the perfect job for you." I go, "Cool. Is it going to make me a lot of money?" He goes, "No, no, no. It's not that kind of job." I go, "Oh."
Okay.
And so, but it was a job. My childhood nickname has been Ace. As I mentioned, I played tennis
Right.
for
Oh, that's why Ace.
growing up
Okay.
pretty competitive. Yeah,
Okay.
pretty competitively growing up.
Okay.
And he goes, no, it's a perfect job for you. And it turned out to be looking after digital for the U.S. Tennis Association,
Oh,
which runs
nice.
the U.S. Open. And so that
Wow.
was, to me, I mean,
The
listen, I went
dream.
from the dream, not just hustling people for small $20 for stringing their rackets. Now I could hustle them for more money for tickets and other things. So, it's just a continuation of what I
Did you
was
meet
always doing.
any star players, Ace?
Yeah, I've got some great pictures somewhere of me with Federer,
Okay.
me with hanging out with Rafa. And in fact, I closed down 53rd Street in New York. We
Okay.
worked with the city and we built a cage match between Federer and Nadal. And
Wow.
so that was cool. So I'm hanging out. And the coolest thing is I moved into the hotel with the players.
Is there
So for that
any
3 weeks,
way people can watch that cage game? Like if they
that's a good
Google.
question. I have pictures from it somewhere and I'll dig them up. But
Okay.
it's actually, they shut down. It was for a company called Tennis Smith, which was
Okay.
part of Golfsmith.
All right.
And this was their promotional kind of, hey, we're gonna shut down traffic in Manhattan, as if that's a good idea.
Must have
That will
been
get
very
people to
expensive, right? That's
I'm sure millions were spent, and I'm sure the people of New York love the idea that you've increased traffic. Okay, so there was like, I don't know if it was super well thought out, but the amazing thing is we would eat with player dining with the players.
Wow.
You would go play, and until I got rid of it recently, my Nintendo Wii that I had down in the basement was actually the Nintendo Wii from the players' lounge back in the
Wow.
day. Nintendo used to
Okay.
give us video game consoles, and
For them
they
to
said,
play
"Oh,
like during downtime.
the craziest thing is these kids are just teenagers, dude. And so,
Yeah.
what do they want to do when they're not playing? They want to play more video games. They want to play tennis on the Wii.
Right. Yeah, tennis on the
So,
Wii. Yeah.
so they're playing each other while waiting to play, or during a rain delay. They're playing tennis on the Wii, which is just crazy.
So
And
how many years, Ace, did you spend? I mean, this was really something
that was
huge.
5. I spent about a good 5+ years doing that,
Wow.
and every year you would go in, and every year I won't say it's not exactly the same. It would get bigger. We'd do more interesting things, but it basically meant from April, so give or take, to about October, my life was pretty much the U.S. Opens,
Right.
and we would not spend. I mean, that was our busy season, and come October, things would mellow out a little bit.
Right.
But and the reason why, and a lot of people don't know this, the reason why the U.S. Open, it is a huge moneymaker, but that money doesn't go to shareholders. It's actually a not-for-profit, and that
Wow.
money goes back
Okay.
to help the community and help them raise money for the growth of tennis.
Okay.
And so all of the leagues and association, the leagues and tournaments that are run are actually then subsidized by that money from the U.S. Open, which is pretty exciting, and allowed me to sort of further the growth of tennis. So I thought, like, it's not quite charity is a strong word, but it is a not-for-profit, and the mission is not just tennis has a bad rap because it seems like it's for rich people or a country club, or people think about Caddyshack. They think about that kind of mentality, but tennis is actually a lot more egalitarian. It's a lot cheaper sport, maybe not as cheap as soccer, football, but
Or
certainly cheaper than
basketball.
American football or
Yeah.
hockey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, which are very
I think
expensive
it's
sports
becoming more
to play.
affordable, right? It's just becoming a little bit more affordable than
Yeah,
before, right?
that's right.
And then you went to, I remember you saying to me, you went to kind of an athletic company right after this, no?
Yeah, so that was a really, it's a very small fraternity of folks that
Okay.
are in sports, especially digital sports. So we have these certain conferences, SBJ, the sport. When somebody says in sports, oh, I read it in the journal, they don't mean Wall Street Journal. They mean Sports Business Journal.
All right.
And so the SBJ is sort of like, okay, they have a conference. You see everybody that you're friends with, also your future employees and your future employers. It's basically all guys in sports hanging out with each other, all looking at each other saying, I can't believe we get paid to do this. And, they're just excited they get to be in sports. This was their dream forever. One of the companies that I got to go to, that approached me, was a company called Exos. And we trained, I know Liverpool is your team.
Yes, definitely.
Uh, you know, but we trained. I don't think Liverpool is one of the teams that was trained by them, but they trained Everton, for example,
Oh my
and they
God.
trained more interesting. Well, Everton is, as you can imagine, Everton has had a big uptick.
Yeah. Oh,
This is another,
yes.
but
I'm
what's
never
in,
gonna
you
give
never
them
used to
credit,
see.
but yes.
What's awesome was most NFL first round draft picks were from this company, and it started. It's a very cool company. It started because the former head of the NFL Players Association, named Mark Verstegen, built a business to help strength and conditioning for the players. And it was sort of an elite refuge. Like, so if you're a super great athlete, you don't want to train at Equinox.
No, no,
Okay.
no.
You want to train, and
At
this
an
is a
elite, yeah, I
crazy,
got you. Yeah.
and so it's next level. I don't know if you ever saw that Rocky 3, the Russian
Yeah,
one.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes. It's basically that, with fewer Russians.
And
So 25.
you got it got sold, no, or bought out.
So it got sold. I mean, exciting that, it got sold to I'll just say a fancy private equity firm for
Right,
quite a bit of money. And that was exciting because, but what we did that was interesting in between there was, since we trained high end elite athletes around the world, okay, and it's every NFL, Major League Baseball, Olympic athletes, and we never mention who those athletes are. You just know that it's a monopoly in the game.
right,
Google came to us, Intel came to us, IBM came to us, and we ended up building a business based on that learning that we had
right.
about training high-end elite athletes. So we could have people like you train like,
Athletes
you, the
was
regular, like an athlete.
was the because now the buzzword is like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and a few other things. Was that part of the model of the
Yeah, I think it could have been. This was a
technology?
number of years ago. I think it could have been when Lululemon bought the company Mirror recently, and they spent $500 million in cash. What was exciting about that was a lot of the same stuff that we were building.
Okay,
What they were able to go do is actually get it, rather than you having to go to a facility or to work at within a corporate wellness gym. This allowed you to bring it into the home, so it's almost like the last mile of it.
of the stuff.
And so, yeah, there was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of AI. So the basic part of AI in there, where over time, to get you the most efficient workout, if you tell me you want to run the marathon in less than 4 hours or less than 4.5 hours, and we'll go, okay, based on what we know about you, here's a program that we think can work, and that program gets adjusted over time. Uh, and we said we can get you there in 26 sessions. Okay. And you
That's
go in, and,
you
once
get
a
there.
week, twice a week, you'll go to the session. And then, as you get more data, you're getting more biomarkers. They're running blood tests on you. They're even doing psychological profiles on, are you the type of guy that wants to be yelled at or coddled? And,
And
they're doing a
it's big
psychological
thing. It's
workup.
big thing in sports. It's big thing in
Yes.
sports how to motivate a player. Each one responds differently, and
Yes.
that's the kind of the man management of coaches and managers, to get the
And
best.
they can use a lot of data for it. And a lot of the coaches now are getting this access. And we're starting to see that. MIT Sports Analytics Conference is famous for this, is
Okay.
we're getting more access to data. And the Whoop band, I don't know if you know about that. That's sort of
No.
it's a Boston, Cambridge-based company. A lot of the NBA athletes are wearing them now. I think they're all going to be required to wear it
Oh, the
because
whoop. Yeah.
it's
They.
basically,
Yeah. Got.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
yeah.
So, hey. So now
It's a status
you
symbol.
you went. So now this is all you obviously working for other companies. Excelling in your craft, or building on your craft, and then you do something special in medical records, right? Tell us a
Yeah.
little
So,
bit about
about
that.
it was super interesting and sort of opportunistic. So I grew up I'll just say I have a large family of doctors in my family.
Okay.
Okay. And
Actual
so
physicians, not
actual physicians,
actual
not
physicians.
my
Yes.
sister who is a PhD in anthropology.
Okay. No, no.
Okay.
Actual
Although she is a
physician.
doctor.
Yes. Actual.
She is a
She's a
doctor.
doctor. No. She earned it, that, for sure.
Yes.
But you were talking about
If you're on
physicians.
an airplane, you don't need an anthropologist.
No, no,
Okay.
no. You're talking about the what? Yes, I got it.
Yeah. So a medical doctor like my father and a
Right.
bunch of other relatives. And so, for example, when I look at this and just realize the doctor part of it, They're not necessarily tech guys. They're not necessarily business guys.
Right.
And the government stepped in to try to figure out, how do we get these doctors to start to use the technology more to get patients, to try to get the healthcare dollars down. So by adopting medical records, and a lot of the doctors are still writing everything down in notebooks. They have terrible handwriting, medical errors, lots of problems. So they said, let's go spend $30 billion and incentivize the US market of 850,000 physicians. Let's get every one of them on the electronic medical records.
Okay.
So I said, look, let me go build a business around that, little bit of government, it's called meaningful use, statutes that, sort of funded mandates that came in. And we built an interesting business that was interesting, although hard to scale. And what it was basically a directory of all the possible EMR companies, of which there are 700. And then we did all the research and we figured out, here are the ones that fit a cardiologist. Here's the ones that fit a cardiologist in a 5 to 20 person practice. Here's one that fits if you have a budget over X. And what's fascinating with that is actually, it worked, and we were able to build a bunch of content. We built a platform. We decided that even, although I've been at VC funded companies and spent a lot of time with VC friends, that we decided that we would rather fund it ourselves and kind of be the masters of our own destiny.
Smart way.
And, painful way.
Well, it's a slower way, but it's a slower way, but I think it has there's some upside to it, I think, no?
There is some upside. If you can read a cap table, and especially now, and we're seeing this with younger entrepreneurs, if you can read a cap table, you don't want venture money. Because at the end, you realize, listen, the reason why I build a business is to make, hopefully you're building a product and serving man and doing all sorts of great stuff.
Right.
But you might want an economic return as well.
Right.
And if you can do that, owning, the chances that you will own a significant amount of the company after raising Series C, D, or E
is minute.
Pretty low.
Yeah. Or you turn out into, the guy who did Reddit, and, that's not what you want.
Rare story. Alexis Ohanian. There's so many rare stories of, people who had good exit. It doesn't seem that there's a connection. The real thing is actually, how big is your total addressable market?
Right.
Can you get the unit economics right? Can you build it? And I think VC money is great if you want to add some fuel to the fire. But, until you figured out how big the fire is and where you're building the fire, you can sometimes take it too early.
Right.
So what we did from there is we pivoted. We built an interesting business. Turns out of the 850,000 doctors, many of them had purchased already. After that had happened, they don't need it again. So we started looking around and looked at an opportunity. The opportunity was to build a business around getting consumers their medical records. And we go, oh, well, that's weird. Because, if you're in Saudi or if you're in England, I'll use London as an example. You just go online, go to NHS, you look up your records, and it's there.
Right.
The American system, as you found out, and your mom found out,
it's a pain. It's a drag. It's a drag. Yeah.
And it's holding back a lot of progress and a lot of being able to see data and things. But what we've morphed into is, by the end of the summer, it will be a 1.5 million page site that ranks for, right now, say 80 to 100,000 keywords. We move traffic, and that's getting really interesting. And we're starting to see some great organic growth on that part without ever writing a PR release. We've never done a PR release. And
so one's coming soon, right? One has to come soon. No?
We will, Skippy Doo will co-brand one with us.
Oh, that'd be great.
We're just trying to build the foundation, right? And I think we're now getting there.
Yeah.
And what was very fortuitous for us is a couple of years ago, a friend of mine that I had known for a number of years, had been at a company called EverQuote.
Right.
And
that went public. That went
public last year.
That went public last year. Yeah.
And had a very good exit. I think it's worth 1.5 billion or whatever it is now. It's some crazy amount.
Right.
And he, I'll say the former head of biz dev and the former head of technical joined medical records.
Right.
And what we're doing is something very similar to what EverQuote did. But
Right.
rather than focusing on the auto insurance space, we're looking at the health insurance space. And
Right.
what they did was, it's an algo stack and a very efficient technology-led way of getting users to your site through paid search and paid social. They come to our media property, and we run an open marketplace. And what that means is basically, if you want to buy leads for people who are looking for health insurance, life insurance, Medicare supplement, I don't care. There's tons of marketplaces.
Right.
If you're looking for those people, we can help you. Just sign up, sign up with us, be a qualified buyer, and we'll sell you leads. And so that gets really exciting. So we are using the buzzwords you're mentioning about AI and ML. There's a lot more of that in there.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than just those. So Ace, and we'll get to this. I mean, you seem you've had a very cool career, right? And you found what you like to do pretty early, which is marketing, digital marketing, tech, and entrepreneurship and in business. But you're also a dad, and you're a dad of a very special girl that I'm very fond of. How do you, because there's always this chat of saying, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to really make it, you want to reach those dreams, it's all in. And then someone doesn't necessarily have to suffer, but there's less time given to others, right, in life. But you seem to be, I know you pretty well. You seem to be balancing pretty well. Your business is on the uprise. You spend a lot of hours crushing it, but at the same time, you're taking care of your daughter, making sure she's progressing, and you do a lot of activities with her. How do you find that balance?
I think you've got to be married. So the answer is, I would love to say that it's all me and Super Dad, and I may buy a Super Dad T-shirt at some point if Skippy Doo sells it. But I think on the other part is like, look, my wife luckily handles a lot of basic things that allow me to focus. Luckily I get to focus on work stuff. COVID has sharpened the pencil a little bit because, hey, I don't get to go out to eat. I'm not meeting friends. There's no random meetings. There's no random anything. And so, but I think from a bigger picture, you're right. It's kind of you to say she's special. I think every parent believes their kid is special. And
no, but she is, and we'll get to. I'll get to why soon. But she is.
Yeah. So I think the idea is actually, there's not a really good answer. I mean, I don't play golf because I look at the efficiency of golf and I'm going, listen, for me to go play golf is 4 to 6 hours on a Saturday, whatever, 3 to 4 hours plus dinner, plus lunch, whatever. It's like, for me to go do a lot of other things that might be time intensive, I've actually gone like, okay, how can I efficiently spend time on weekends, for example?
Right.
And so I try to make sure that I don't travel very much for business. So I try to figure out my system for that I try to make sure I'm here for, we have dinner together. Most nights, have this post-COVID all nights, but
right.
But
before COVID,
the idea is actually like keeping the meal time. And on the weekends, for example, even if there's people inviting, going, hey, we're having this great party, get a babysitter, come out, or let's go here. I basically said, like, you know what? I've done all that. I mean, I lived in Manhattan for years. It's unlikely that the suburbs of Boston are going to have a better party than I've been to in New York. Okay. I'm actually going to say it's unlikely.
It's unlikely.
It is not going to happen. So I'm not saying I've kind of gotten past that part, but the answer is like, look, I would much rather
spend it with
stuff.
Yeah.
Spend it now. And you kind of realize there's only a very few number of years because she just turned 10 or recently turned 10. And, hey, I've got maybe a few more years before, she leaves me unread on instant message.
Yeah, well, I mean, you become less cool. That happens to everyone.
It's very limited. You've got a limited window.
Limited window. So, I mean, your daughter does some pretty cool stuff that most kids are probably maybe not interested in or not do at all. One of them is she loves animals, but she loves sloths, right? In particular.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us the affinity with sloths and why, why?
Well,
What's the
so
deal?
she could probably tell you more reasons why. I don't know why the sloth as a cool animal. I think it just, oh, that thing is cool. Why is it cool? And then it went down this deep rabbit hole of all sorts of reasons. And then we found ourselves on stage at the Children's Museum of Boston, which,
Okay.
I'm pretty actively involved in. So she's at the annual meeting on stage, talking about sloths and her project about her new website, Sloth HQ,
Okay.
which is still being worked on.
Is it
And,
launched or not yet?
not yet. So she's learned, the answer is she's now got the keys to it. She's understanding a little bit more. The very funny thing is we have very limited screen time for her until recently. So she's not allowed on the computer that much. So it was very hard for her to get it done. And that was sort of if it was up to me, I would have said, yeah, go spend 10 hours, a day doing
building it. Yeah.
done. But I think in a balanced household with my wife saying that's a terrible idea,
Okay.
the answer is it didn't get done during the school year. Now
Some time.
she's learning a lot more stuff about it. And I think she understood, like, for example, talking to our other friend Angel, for example, about affiliate marketing.
Right.
She understands how affiliate marketing works, and she started putting stuff together on Amazon so she can actually create a sloth store. She started to figure out like what charities are out there, and she started doing research on figuring out like, okay, if you make money on this, I go, she's 9 or 10, she doesn't need to go make money.
It's good to know,
but
ways and
but it's good to understand
how this
it's a
whole
good way
thing
to
works.
keep score, though.
Yeah.
You got to know how it works. And
Yeah.
I'm going like, well, look, why don't you go make some money for the sloths? So we found a conservation charity there, and so researching how you look into that. And then she started reading everything, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's, any number of things, started going dark, deep, dark paths of like learning everything there is, including about their unusual digestive systems.
Love it.
As you know, they don't fart, and things like that.
Love it. So, and then she does a number of sports, right? One of which is the cap you're wearing, hydro, which is kind of the peloton of rowing, right?
Of rowing, yes.
Yeah.
So she's really into the rowing and crew stuff, which I didn't expect to happen.
Right.
But she really enjoys it, and she's on it 20, 30 minutes a day.
So this machine, Ace, is what? Just in your house, and you just row and...
Yeah, so it's like a Peloton, same model, same business model.
Right.
It is much larger.
I know.
Yes.
I know.
It's
Mine is
larger.
stuck in LA right now. Yes.
It is, but it is a better workout than Peloton.
Right.
And so it uses more of the body and uses muscles. And I go, look, it's a Cambridge company. I happen to meet the CEO, and I go, wow, they're really doing some great stuff.
It's the Boston take. It's the Boston spin.
It's a Boston tech thing, but I was surprised to learn it was here in Boston. It's an LA kind of company.
It is an LA kind of company. Yeah. And they filmed in Miami, right? So it's it's not very Massachusetts but it's
not at all. Even the way they're approaching look, they raised 25 million to begin with. Now they raised another 25 million.
Yeah.
That is not Boston like. Boston is a little more conservative.
Yeah. And she does curling.
She has 2 other sports that she plays. So curling turned out to be a good friend of mine who a friend of yours as well, Kevin Ohashi.
Oh, yes.
He
definitely.
and I used this as an excuse because the kids would have curling. His kids were curling.
Okay.
And as it turns out, there's a curling facility in between our houses in the middle of the woods, and it's massive.
So what's curling?
And it's an interesting sport.
Yeah,
curling
what is it?
is, well, I'm surprised it's not more popular in Saudi, but it is basically imagine a hockey rink with different kind of ice, but more like shuffleboard.
So
curling,
you hurl
you're pushing a 46-pound rock.
Okay.
It's 46 pounds, and you're shoving it across. And it's almost, some people have called it chess on ice.
Okay.
It's very strategic, very tactical. But one of the reasons I liked it, and the reason why Kevin roped me in, it's 4 kids on a team, and they play other kids of 4. There are no parents on the ice. and there's a ref in tournaments, but there's no ref otherwise. The kids have to work it out themselves. It's all a very gentlemanly game, or gentle personly game.
Right.
And what's fascinating about it is not an NCAA sanctioned sport. And what that means is there are no scholarships to go become a curling champion.
So you keep the fun and
School.
the sportsmanship in the
That's
game.
right.
There's no corruption. There's no, I got it. There's
You're
no,
doing
yeah,
it because you love to play and you
yeah,
want to play the sport. And crew is the same thing for up to a point. It's very popular in high school, especially here in the New England area.
yes,
But there is a lot of money to go to school with
yes,
it.
yeah,
And she's really gotten into squash, and the squash part is very hard in COVID times right now. But she's still doing virtual squash, and they're going in and they're doing their exercises and they're doing their they even have tactical gameplay. They're watching YouTube videos, and it's taught by, in this case, taught by two great coaches, Luke and Hamid, and they're
amazing.
the assistant coach. Yeah, they're
What is it?
assistant coaches at Harvard.
Is it you on YouTube or you have to be
No,
part of
it's
the
taught via Zoom. Yeah,
right?
it's taught at Zoom. They have a class and they're going in. It's Saturday mornings that we're doing it, and I think they've quit for a little bit this summer. They'll be back shortly, but it's the idea was squash would be a team sport, crew can be a team sport, curling is a collaborative sport, and listen, the end of it is these are sort of, having spent some time in sports, the idea of these are games that you can play lifelong. Okay.
Yeah,
You can play squash until your 40s, 50s, 60s. People keep playing. You can row until the same. People play curling. Turns out it's not a lot of strenuous exercise. So you can play that till you're maybe 80s or 90s. Okay. And so the idea was that, like, if you could learn this, if I drop Sabrina off in, how about this? I drop her in a GCC country of your choice, and I say, okay, make some friends. If you know how to play squash or tennis or blank or whatever, what have you, you can go make friends.
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Anything
And so
through
that's
sports
something
and
that I
play.
saw with
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's
something I saw with tennis that was very useful to me. And so that was important to me.
so before we close out, Ace, what's all fathers and all families, either mothers, fathers, all together, there are some challenges in these times, and you just mentioned screen time is a huge kind of proponent. What are some challenges that you see that you're a bit wary of and you're trying to kind of um, avoid or kind of manage for
Yeah.
the
So
kids?
there's two things I'm thinking about. One I've been thinking about a lot is inequity. So I'm actually not so worried about Sabrina being able to keep up with school. I tell her every day she should drop out. She's, about to go to fifth grade. I said, don't waste your time in school. Okay. But, luckily her mother is there to say,
Yeah,
no,
to
take a
balance
look,
it out, keep
to balance out.
yeah,
And so the answer is something in between, right? I mean, school's going to look different. College will look different for our kids.
right,
But the inequity of, like, look, whether white collar, however you frame the job, two people, two parents who are able to be at home, being able to tell the kid to get off, don't play Roblox and Minecraft all day. Don't watch garbage TV all day. Go do this, go do that. You know what? We're lucky, in our family, we're lucky, and we are surrounded by lots of people that are like-minded. This isn't the case in, like, Nashville, Tennessee, for example. Fully 1/3 of the kids, when they go online, 1/3 of the kids don't have access to a Chromebook or not online.
right,
So those kids are actually going to fall behind. And education was a great leveler. So I'm actually thinking about inequity being one of the big things.
right,
And the second thing is socialization. And I think we all worry about that for our kids of, like, hey, don't get mixed up with the wrong crowd. But what you never thought about is don't get mixed up with any crowd is a weird idea,
right.
right? The idea that if a kid is alone, now your kids are able to fight and argue amongst themselves, and that's good. And Sabrina is an only child, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm an
today,
only child, but
yes,
what helped was, I was among friends and family, and so you got to experience.
cousins and
Yes,
cousins to go talk to.
yeah,
And so, I'll just, the one idea is that, look, you have to sort of transform a little bit. So right now we're we have two competing fake businesses that I've been teaching Sabrina about. So Sabrina's is called Sabrina's Samosas.
Okay.
Okay, samosa, of course, is the
The
Indian
oh wait, no, well, wait.
subcontinent.
The Arabic sambusa or the Indian samosa? Which is
Depends.
hers what the Indian the
Hers, hers is going to be Middle East. Who knows? It's going to have za'atar in it and
okay.
sumac. Who knows? Hers could be. Who knows? Hers, but and mine is called Super Samosas.
Okay.
And so they're competing businesses. And every day I go, oh, it's a shame what happened to you yesterday. And so trash talking about two fake businesses. And this is sort of like just getting her just like, and you're acting like,
Yeah, like a kid. Like, yeah, it's like, like they would say, they would fight about my shoes better than you, whatever it is,
Yes. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like, I can't believe, yours were terrible. And it's imaginary. So she can't be offended because it totally did not exist.
No, but this is so good because you become a kid. You are now taking you're taking a role as a kid, which is, fun for you and fun for her. And I think that's all.
Well, you got to
about.
put it down at their level, right? I mean, I think this is the part where you and I chat about, as at the end, if you're always the authority figure,
no, you can't be.
It becomes hard for you to always be. And so then there's a balance there with actually, okay, but when you use your dad voice, which I'm sure you do, the dad voice is different than the play voice.
Yes.
And I think that's part of our.
That's the great relationship that people have. And I think you touched on something, and I think we talk about this all the time is, having a diverse background or, building that diverse, how you say, like, not empathy is one of it, but that cultural intelligence of kind of understanding where, everyone, I mean, because you come from an ethnic background. So you already have, you have two different cultures. You have the Indian culture and you have the US culture, but you have that in the household. Many kids don't around the world, right? And I think maybe building that bridge, well, now through technology in a kind of a good way, I think maybe would have or help. We do our part to help have a more.
I think without it, you're no good. Like you've got to feel the other. You've got to put yourself in somebody else's place.
Yeah.
And Sabrina, who so my wife is Indian American.
Yeah.
And who grew up in New York.
Right.
But to my daughter and even to my parts of our family, she's from a different part of India.
Right.
Her family is from a different part of India.
Yeah.
And they're not completely convinced since the other person is truly Indian. So Sabrina looks at it as like, well, I'm half this and half that. Even within being ethnically diverse in a town that is also fairly diverse. But you're right. And I think this diversity is a strength now. We're starting to see a lot more of this, is that, if you're boring, if your name is John Smith, nobody can find you on Google.
No.
You might as well, you might not exist.
Yeah. No, it's been good. So one last thing, obviously we talked about that stuff, Ace. And before I let you go, you're on, many of these boards and judges in Harvard and MIT for entrepreneurship and competitions and so forth. If you had any advice, right, for a kid or a parent, that want to get into entrepreneurship or you want to dabble in it or start in it, what would be 2 or 3 key takeaways that you'd say, listen, focus on this, and you're really giving yourself a chance to learn?
I think it's intellectual curiosity is the main thing, right? So at the end there's like, why are Beats headphones popular?
Well,
okay, why do kids want Yeezy? I saw. Don't worry. To be observant, I think, is part of this. Right. And so this idea of like, why do people do things? Right. I mean, that's maybe that's for my sister being the anthropologist. The answer of why people do things is really important. So not just, it's popular or why. But the other part is actually, I think about the difference between, think about iPad viewing and watching YouTube versus creating. And I think the quicker we can get into creating mode, I mean, I love what you're doing with the podcasts and constantly trying new things and talking to people about these kind of questions, right? This is the valuable part of whether it's Skippy-Doo or other things that I know you and I have worked on together.
Yeah.
This is the valuable part is, how do you, why do people do things is the first part, but actually creating, it's not enough just to be an academic, but using that knowledge of why people do that
Right.
to do something and to
And you're
build. And it
gonna,
doesn't matter if it's any good.
and you're just going to keep on. I mean, it's to find that, real kind of, you don't want to put a plaster on. You really want to kind of solve the issue, right? And you're going to
Yeah.
fall and get up until, but I think it's that kind of, would you say, having that open mindset to saying, listen, it's okay to kind of fall down, get up, fall down and get up until I kind of find, but be aware, not be stubborn and saying, this is it, I'm just going with it. You're going to have to be flexible.
It's a weird. I mean, grit is what a lot of people call it, right? American
Yes.
children's. It's like, I don't know. There's stubborn and there's grit and there's this. I don't know. I don't have a magic. There's no magic answer. Every kid is different, right? Just like every athlete is different.
Right.
What they need is different sometimes.
But that is either kid or parent, right? It's if you're going into that kind of space, you're gonna have to be, those some qualities that you need.
But I think the kids if you're creating, it's never been easier to go create right now. The tools that are out there, like Canva, you don't have to know Photoshop. No. Just get to Canva. You don't have to know. There's a lot of things that are out there. It's never been easier to get a podcast, to get
and kids are,
to do all these things.
Kids are creating their own websites. You said Sabrina's learning Python now, and there's a lot of these programs out there, and people are available. Yep. So there's a lot there's a lot from this comfort of your home, to stay active and mind, body, soul. There's a lot of things out there that you can really. Not like us.
Yet.
We had, we were just, a couple of things, and we, that was our access. Now it's really, take your pick.
Yeah. And I think, I actually think about that a lot. I mean, it's crazy to see the opportunity. And that's why I said, and I'll sort of leave it at the inequity, the digital divide gives everyone opportunities. You could go take courses on Udemy, Coursera, all these different places. You could learn from the best, MITx. You could learn from the best people in the world, but like, you have to be there. You have to sort of be receptive to that.
I think micro courses that are very focused, 6 months, 2 years kind of thing. I think that might be the future, because you're in and out. You understand what you need to do. You kind of go from there. So Ace, it was a real pleasure.
Thanks so much. Sorry we went over. It's always fun talking to you.
Yes, definitely. And I hope a lot of people benefit from the discussion we had, and I hope to see you play some of the games. I know you're playing it in secret, but be good to.
We will get better at that. And I think actually the other thing is that one last thing I'll say is the games is the right answer. Everything is a game.
Everything
and so
is a game.
As we sat there and you're playing with the kid and you're going like, I don't know. I bet you can't do 300, I bet you can't do 30 squats while you're brushing your teeth.
They'll do
Suddenly it's like, brushing your teeth became important.
Yes.
So if everything becomes a game,
it's fun.
Maybe it works. I don't know. We'll see. The jury's still out, but I appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking the time out.
No, thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing all of you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Ace.